The room buzzed with soft laughter, flashes popping like distant thunder. Keanu sat motionless in the center of it, shoulders relaxed, eyes steady. Across from him, a white interviewer leaned forward with that grin, thin, practiced, and sharp around the edges. "So Keanu," he began, drawing out the vowels like bait, "did you study to sound so refined? Or is that your whole thing now?" The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it lingered, thick in the air. Keanu didn't blink. He turned his head slightly, just enough to meet the man's gaze. No smile, no anger, just presence. He'd heard it before. How some people used words like refined and well-spoken to remind you didn't belong. He didn't need to answer. He let the silence stretch. Behind the cameras, someone shifted uncomfortably. The interviewer cleared his throat. Keanu's voice, when it finally came, was low. "I listen more than I talk. That tends to help." He hadn't always answered like that. Years ago, in a smaller studio with older lights and a host just as smug, he'd smiled through worse. They joked about his philosopher thing, asked if he even belonged in Hollywood with that accent, the one they couldn't quite place. It wasn't outrage that stayed with him. It was how normal it felt to them, like mocking his roots was part of a script. The worst part, he played along. Not because he agreed, but because he didn't think it would matter if he didn't. Until the messages started. Quiet, anonymous ones. Crew members, interns, actors who hadn't made it out. You didn't laugh back. That helped. Years passed. The moments stacked up. One host asked if he was trained to sound smart. Another called him the Zen version of the help. The crowd chuckled always. Cameras never cut. But what no one saw was that he'd been recording too. Memories, details, names. Every cruel smirk, every story someone trusted him with backstage. Not revenge. Proof. And now, finally, it was time to stop being quiet. The studio that morning looked like all the others, polished, shallow, controlled. But there was a shift in the air. Maybe it was the empty seat beside him, reserved for the same host who once called him the least believable intellectual since Forrest Gump. The man arrived late, tie loose, ego tight. The interview began like they always did. A few light questions, a few snickers. Then came the moment. "Keanu," the host said, laughing lightly, "you've been everyone's favorite monk actor for decades. Ever worry it's just an act?" The room waited. Keanu reached into his jacket and placed a folder on the table, worn, quiet, real. "This isn't about me," he said, voice steady. "This is about what's been allowed." He opened it. Emails, testimonies, screenshots, names blurred, pain intact. The host's grin faltered. "Come on, man. You're not serious." Keanu looked at him, not with anger, not with pity, just a stillness that unsettled. "I don't raise my voice, but I remember everything." Cameras captured the silence. Not a dramatic scene, but a rupture, small, devastating. The host glanced to the producers. No one moved. Something had changed. It didn't happen instantly. No headlines screamed his name the next day. But the video spread, slow and heavy like smoke. Not because Keanu exposed someone, but because he didn't try to. He just showed what had always been there. The host's voice, once everywhere, faded. Sponsors stepped back. Invitations dried up. In a quiet neighborhood far from studios, he sat on his porch, rereading old emails from fans who no longer wrote back. Meanwhile, Keanu walked through a city park alone. A young man approached, uncertain. "My sister," she said, "thank you." Said she saw herself in that silence. Keanu nodded gently. No speech, no pose, just presence. Across the internet, clips resurfaced. Interviews where others had laughed too hard, talked over too much. People saw it now. The shift wasn't loud. It was in the way strangers looked at silence differently, and how truth, once ignored, had finally stayed in the room.